So Mason, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. And just so a little backstory, I came on your podcast. You did such an incredible job interviewing me that I was like, Mason, you got to come on my podcast. I want to know more about you. So that's what this is.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, Danny. Thanks for having me. And it's a blessing to be able to have real, intimate, raw conversations with people. I think that was part of the reason why I decided to start my own podcast, Breathin Air, is because of that. I didn't think that there's enough real conversations that are being had, and you definitely have a gift for this. So thank you so much for having me on.
Hell yeah, man. And so let's stay on that topic of podcasting right away. Why did you start your podcast? What's the story behind that?
So after my first year out of college, I kind of rose from the ashes. It was like drinking water out of a fire hose, right? Everybody knows that first year when you're launched into a new job, a new business, a new environment. And so I kind of rose from that, and I was like, man, what do I want to do with my life? Like, I have a great job. I'm thankful for my job, but how do I want to be remembered? Like, what do I want my legacy to be? And what are things that I've been holding back that I haven't really been showing the world, my true feelings and the things that I think I can make a difference in? There's Steve Weatherford. You love Steve Weatherford. He is a Super Bowl champ. He's a great father, Christian man, bodybuilder. He's a stud, all around stud. So there's one thing that he said that I really loved, and it was own your gifts, own your gaps. And that really hit home for me because I think I have a gift of communication, and it's okay to say that, guys. Like, if you all innately have things that you're good at, right? So own those things, and then own the things that you're bad at, and be able to look yourself in the mirror. So a long way around that question, right? But the big thing was, hey, I love these podcasts. I think they can really help people. And I had all these ideas in my head about, starting a business, starting my own brand, and not just a brand as a business format, but the brand of the person that I wanted to be. That when people say, who was Mason Bendigo? This is my brand, right? And just long story short, I was in the shower and was thinking about these things. I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to stop talking and start doing, and I'm going to put action behind all these thoughts. And here we are a year later, about 50 episodes in, and so many great connections and just conversations and helping people along their journey as well as me. I always tell people I get so much more out of this than they realize. Like, I in turn can help a lot of people, which makes me feel even better, but I'm learning from so many great people along the way.
When did you realize you had this gift for communication?
So going into college, actually, I went in as a journalism major because I didn't, much like a lot of people, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I just thought, hey, I'm good at writing. I'm good at reading. This communication platform, I believe I'm good at. Innately, I wasn't really scared of public speaking. And I think being in a football locker room as well, I played college football. Sports was my whole life growing up. It was my identity. And so that's a whole different topic. But so I think being in a locker room full of 100+ guys from a bunch of different backgrounds, from, middle class, lower class, Black, white, Asian, like all types of different people from all types of different backgrounds, to be able to come together for a common goal, it was the biggest thing for me. And I was blessed to be a captain my sophomore year and be able to just that was one of the biggest blessings and things that I look back. I'm like, man, this group of men who we go to battle together, we fight together, we wake up at 5 a.m., we eat together, we live together. Like, this family trusted me enough to, vote me as a captain of that team. And I think still to this day, that's one of, the biggest honors that I've had the pleasure of having. And
that was in college or high school?
High school and college, but college was the one I was particularly talking about. But yeah, I mean, it is definitely something that, I look back on and I'm like, man, I'm so grateful for that opportunity just to play and be in that environment, have the game, the adrenaline. There's not much like it. So I just, the lessons that I learned from that are never ending. They'll always be.
So in doing research for this conversation, I found out that you were the starting quarterback for your high school football team that went 11-2 and advanced to the Missouri 6A state semifinals. I don't know if that's impressive, but it sounds good on a resume. So talk to me about that that experience and how that shaped you, if it did at all.
Yeah. So that was my senior year. And before that, my sophomore year, I got the call up, right? I got the opportunity to start on varsity, and it was the biggest thing for me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the hallway with my girlfriend at the time, walking, and my high school football coach just walks up to me. He's like, hey, Mason, this is like 3 days before the homecoming game. He's like, hey, Mason, so-and-so is injured. You're going to start. Just like that. Like it was just in passing, like it wasn't anything formal. And I'm just sitting there like, what? This opportunity as a sophomore, to start on varsity. And I was so, grateful, excited, pumped for this opportunity. I go out there, end of the first half, scrambling around, trying to make a play. They had a Division I offensive lineman who I think ended up playing in the league for a little bit. His name was Elijah Lee. We'll have to check my facts on that. But scrambled around, go to the sideline, get hit from the front, get hit from the side. My knee goes, boop. And I thought for a second, I'm laying on my back. I'm like, oh, my knee's dislocated. It's dislocated. I know it. And I kind of roll around and I look at my knee and it's there. It's fine. Like, okay, I'm fine. Like I'm good. Stand up, try to put pressure on it. It just buckles. I'm like, oh shit. Like this is not good. So end up having a torn ACL, right? So I went from the highest of the high, right? I was like, I'm homecoming, packed out, like 8,000 people in high school. That's like a big thing, right? You're like, this is incredible. And just top of the world to boom, everything's taken from you in an instant. So that was one of the big factors of building a tough mindset for me at an early age.
What year was that?
Oh, that was 2012.
2011. You were what year? Sophomore in high. And so how long did it take you then to recover from that injury and then play football again?
It took me about 6 months, and then I came back and was able to play and dealt with a few other injuries, but man, was thankfully able to get a scholarship. I actually tore my ACL a second time too.
Wow.
My senior year in high school, right after I had signed my letter of intent to go to Lindenwood to play football, I was playing pickup basketball 3-on-3. And I was in the best shape of my life at the time. I was training my ass off to go into college and make an impact right away. And pickup basketball, my competitive juices got flowing, tore it again. So they're like, oh no, like I'm going to lose my scholarship. Like, am I even going to play college athletics? And thankfully I was able to recover from that and, be able to start 7 games my redshirt freshman year in college, and then played every year that I was in college since. So no, just nicks and knacks. So no crazy surgeries or anything in college. So I'm very blessed for that. But just one of those things that you look back on like, wow, that really helped mold me into the person that I am today.
What do you tell someone who's going through a situation you didn't ask to have a torn ACL? You just this happened to you. So how do you tell someone who's in a similar situation that they didn't ask for, that's just a terrible situation? What's your advice to that person on how to rebuild their mind and how to rebuild themselves?
Yeah, I would say look at it as life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you.
Wow.
And that thing that like, I get chills just thinking about that, because like looking back, dude, that was such a cornerstone in my life to be like, look, man, like life is not all about you. Like life is about so much more than sports at that time. That was my world. So it came crashing down. But looking back, I'm like, wow, this gave me a mindset of I will not quit. This gave me a mindset of mental toughness, of perseverance, of having a goal in mind and being able to work until I get to that goal, right? And it's just like life. And that's why I say there's so many correlations between sports and business. And we can talk about the locker room. We can talk about relationships, hard work, getting up early, visioning yourself, making the play, all these things that go into a game and organized sports at that level, right? It all comes back to real life. And those are the lessons that I took with me, and I'm so thankful for from sports and in that journey that I had there. That book is now closed, right? but man, so thankful for that. So thankful.
When you tore your ACL, did you go to the point of like, oh, I'm never going to play football again? What is your mindset initially after? And did you always have this mindset of like, oh, I'm going to take the best out of every situation? Like, take us through that and how that has your mindset transformed at all over the years because of that?
Oh, absolutely. And at first, I don't think that thought ever came into my head. There's obviously always times that you have doubt and doubt in your ability to get the job, get the girl, believe in yourself, right? And that's where it came back to me, where it was like, hey, I gotta just do what I need to do here. I gotta get in the dirt and I gotta get dirty and I gotta grind this out and do my rehab strong and hard, not cut any corners, so that when I get back, I'm even better. I mean, you look at Adrian Peterson, he tore his ACL and came back and almost broke the single season rushing record in history a year after, right? In history. And I'm expecting Odell to do the same thing, right? I see all these videos of him. You get into a dark mental space for an athlete when you get that taken from you, right? It can lead you down a path of like, you just get in your head, you're like, oh no, all this self-doubt, all this like self-worth, because your identity is wrapped up in this game. And that's really where it tricks you, right? You got to be able to say, no, like I'm not listening to any of those thoughts. I'm going to do this right. And I'm going to get back and I'm going to be better.
You mentioned identity, and I'm so happy you brought it up because you were a football player, an athlete your whole life, and then you're not playing professionally at this point. So it's like, you're not an athlete, quote unquote, anymore. How did that affect and change your life? And how do you balance that giving up of an identity? Because it's something I think everyone has had to deal with at some point. So speak a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. I think any athlete or any person in general always has a moment of, man, like what now? Right. And for me specifically, it was, I'm done with football. Now, like, who am I? Like, I'm no longer Mason, the football player. That is a part of me. It will always be a part of me, but who am I? Like, let's look in the mirror and ask ourselves these questions. And I think it's important to do that no matter where you are in life and to check yourself constantly, right? Because if you're not putting out a clear vision, a clear path for your life, you will waver left and right. And you will waver left and right regardless if you have a vision or not. What that vision does is it helps draw you back to the path that you're supposed to be on. So being able to say, hey, this football guy, like this player, like what are the lessons that I learned here? But what are the things I didn't like? Like, was this hard exterior that I tried to put on and, the girls and the partying and all these things, like, was that really me? Was that really the things that I wanted to be remembered as? And like, who am I to my core and who am I not showing the world? Like, what are these gifts or things that I believe are important that people aren't hearing from me? Like, how many people could I be impacting if I was actually being real, vulnerable, not worrying about what other people think? And I think especially in today's day and age, we get so caught up in this person is doing that person is doing this. Why can't I look like that? Why is this person getting married? Why is this person making more money? And there's a very solid quote that I tell myself all the time, because I think we have to constantly remind ourselves this in the Instagram day and age of highlight reels. It's comparison is the thief of joy, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. And I was able to look at that and say, hey, I'm so thankful for that chapter in my life, but it's time to be me, be real, be vulnerable, and look at vulnerability as a power. And I think often as men, we look at vulnerability as something that isn't powerful, that's weak. And in reality, being vulnerable is one of the most powerful things that you can do.
I couldn't agree more. And when did you come to that realization? Because I'm just thinking it must have been difficult for you if you were known as this person who has a hard exterior, and you might have been forced to do that as a football player. How do you then lean into the vulnerability? Was there how did you come to that conclusion that that's what you needed to do?
I think it's always listening to your heart, right? Living through that. And that sounds corny to an extent, but we all have these inner feelings, right? I think the big three pillars of success are body, mind, and spirit. At the end of the day, if I can say, did I get 1% better in each of these three categories, then I think that I had a successful day, right? And that's that spirit inside of you. Whether you believe in God, whether you're a Christian, whether you believe in Buddha, whatever you believe in, there's a spirit that's within us, right? And you can hear it. Some people call it their conscience, right? That spirit inside of you is telling you, look, you probably shouldn't be doing this, or this is your calling. Like, if you listen for that calling, it will come, right? You have to be searching for it, though. If you search, you will find. And I really believe that. And I was searching. I think we all search at times for that, trying to fill that void, right? That gap. And there's a lot of these bad things that we could try and fill that void with. And when I came from rose from the ashes, like I said, from that first year, and I actually had time to think about that, it was like, okay, this is who I am. This is what makes me happy. Helping other people makes me happy. Real conversations make me happy. And I want to be known for something more than just a good athlete or this or that, right?
When you say listening to yourself, I think that's so important. How do you personally listen to yourself? Is it in the shower, or is it, at church? How do you listen to yourself and get closer to what you truly believe in your spirit?
So one of the things that I've been doing lately for the past couple of years, and you are a testament to this as well, is one, controlling my mornings, right? And two, mindset. And I've also been taking some cold showers too. There's a lot of little hacks in there that we can do, right? But really finding a way to be one with yourself, right? Not always having to fill your day with constant stimulus. This world is constantly begging for our attention, right? Constantly. And I fall victim to it all the time. Like, I do the mindless scrolling sometimes, like, stop doing that, right? But I think it all comes back to being aware of your thoughts. And Dr. Daniel Amen, he said this pretty well. He calls it ants, right? And he calls it automatic negative thoughts. These things that come into your head all the time, right? These negative thoughts that are always coming into your head, like, you're not worthy, you don't look good enough, you can't do this, like, you're going to fail. And these automatic negative thoughts, we all have them, right? It seems like when we have them, we get so scared because we're like, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking like this. But like, no, it's natural, right? We think of these things, right? We innately are survival beings. We're meant for survival. So those things are constantly in our head, but it's not the thoughts that you have, it's the thoughts that you attach to. And through meditation and through vulnerability and through being aware of my thought life and my mindset and the things that were going on in my head, I was able to control my life more. I was able to take the reins on my life and say, this is where I want to go. And then even more, when you start practicing this, you can start shaping your reality, shaping your mind, and like crafting it into ways that I can't even explain. And I always think like, wow, if I had this ability back when I was playing football, like, I was doing some of these things, but to the extent now of, meditation and all of these other things and modalities that I think are so helpful to living a successful life, mentally, physically, being fulfilled, right? That's at the end of the day what we want, finding happiness. I always say, like, what's success? And I feel like a lot of people say happiness. Okay, well, what is happiness? How do you get to happiness? And, being present and being thankful are two of the big things for me. That's happiness. If my head is somewhere else in the future, right? And it's good to, obviously, you want to set goals, you want to set a path for your life. Or if I'm living in the past, then I can't be here. And if I'm not fully here, I can't be fully happy. And I think that's where I have to constantly remind myself to be here, be aware, and be able to just go within and realize when I go within, then the rest of the world is going to be mine to take. I think the law of attraction is a real thing. We say the law of attraction all the time, right? It's like bringing these thoughts into your life, bringing these people into your life. But I don't think the law of attraction is worth shit without action. We can sit there and say, I want this for my life. I want this for my mental health. I want this for my relationships, whatever it may be. But if we don't act on it, then it's not going to happen, guys. So I think that action is the stimulus. It's the core value for all of these things, but also, you know, being able to have a mindset for that. And that's where Breathin Air came from, my podcast. Breathin Air, everyday action, extraordinary mindset. I think those two things are the catalyst for success and fulfillment in your life.
Could you take us through some of the magic that's happened as a result of acting this way? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. I've experienced it myself. Once I became aware of my actions, my thoughts, I started to realize, oh my God, I can then cultivate things. I can then create things. And that leads to incredible things happening in my life, incredible conversations happening in my life like this one, right? So it's like, talk about some of the magic that's happened, because I think that really can let someone know that you're onto something here.
Yeah. I mean, this is magic. This moment is magic, right? The fact that you and I met is magic. And I think that's the truth for a lot of the guests, all the guests that I have on. It's like these times where you're like, wow, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm pretty sure we said this exact same thing, but it can be replayed in your head. And it's crazy the amount of people, connections, and things that you will draw into your life, the success that will come when you take action towards your goals and you are constantly being consistent, right? It's not about the goals that we have. It's about the standards that we allow ourselves to have, right? It's about the standards that you set in your life, and you have to have responsibility and accountability for yourself there as well. But there was and this is why I think relationships are so important, because there's a study I saw the other day that said when you write something down and you have an accountability partner, you're over 40% more likely to accomplish what you set out to accomplish. So being able to put things on paper was a huge magical thing for me. I'm sitting here looking at some notes that I had right now, just preparing for this. And I'm looking at this word Kaizen. And Kaizen is a Japanese word. I got this idea from a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which I highly recommend to anybody. It's by Robert S. Sharma.
Dude, I was just reading a book, and on the cover it was from like Robert. That guy gave a quote for the book. That's so weird. I just came across that last night.
Read it. And anyone listening, you got to read it. It was one of those that it's like, I'm reading the book and I want to highlight the whole thing. I'm like, this is so good. But Kaizen is the never ending and constant need for improvement, right? It's constantly improving it. And you talk about it, it's self-mastery is the DNA of life mastery. And whenever we can master ourselves and within, it's the whole thing of, if you don't fully love yourself, you can't fully love somebody else, right? And when you are able to realize that, then your whole world changes and your whole perspective changes. And you start seeing things that you never have seen before. And you realize that your energy and your life can impact everybody around you.
Other than The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, is that the name of the book?
Yeah, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, yep.
Other than that, what are some of the books that have changed your mindset and got you on this path? Are there any others that you could think of?
Yeah, so this was a huge one. I'm actually also reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. Incredible book. Lots of really, really good stuff in there. Let's see. Oh, what are some other good ones? Right now I'm reading The Wim Hof Method.
Oh, I love that.
Have you read that?
Have you applied any of it?
Yes. It's incredible.
Game changer.
It really is, dude. It really is. Actually, before we came on, I did like my breathing techniques. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to get into more. A lot of people, I think it's funny, they come on the podcast and they're like, oh, Breathin Air, like I love breath work. I'm like, yes, me too, but that's not all what this is about. This podcast isn't just about breath work, but breathing is something too, right? It's a subconscious thing that we do that keeps us alive. Like we have to breathe. But think if we constantly had to think, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. What kind of existence would that be, right? That'd be weird. But if we want to talk about that as our subconscious, right? We have to program our subconscious. We program these habits, and we can program good things or bad things, and we can be aware of them or unaware. And the scary part is that for so long, you can program subconscious habits that you don't even realize what you're doing. Like, think about your morning routine. And this was another big thing that changed a lot for me, is mastering my mornings and supercharging my mornings, if you want to call it that, right? Morning and night. In the morning and at night, your brain is going through brain states, different brain waves. And basically, your brain is the most moldable during these times when it's changing states. So it is so important, the hour before you go to bed and the hour in the morning, that you take control of this time. So what I've been doing is getting rid of my phone, right? At night, hour before I go to bed. First of all, sleep is important to everything. Recovery, mental health. It's our body's time to clean everything out. You don't feel good if you don't sleep good. A lot of people have sleep problems today, and it's because of our devices. Turn the thing off, right? Not only is it going to, keep you up and keep your mind stimulated, but blue light at night actually diminishes melatonin release in your body. So it's actually scientifically not going to allow you to sleep better as well. So that's a big thing, right? Netflix too, all that stuff. I try and cut off all screens an hour before bed. And then in the mornings, right, your brain's going through that state. You're setting the tone for the rest of your day, right? So this is where Wim Hof breathing comes in. I've tried to do 3 rounds of the Wim Hof breathing. And for those of you that don't know the technique, it's basically following your breath in through the belly, out through the mouth. I primarily like to do nose breathing because I think that we don't breathe through our nose as much as we should. And that's a very just easy life biohack in itself, is to be able to like breathe through your nose, stimulate your vagus nerve, like breathe through your belly, actually really expand your lungs. There's so much power in that alone. But do that, do the Wim Hof, write gratitude, start your day with gratitude. I set my journal and I set my pen and I write the date the night before. And that way, when I wake up in the morning, I see it on the table before I eat breakfast, and it forces me to sit down. And I can't tell you guys how powerful that is setting, visual cues for yourself to stay on the right track, because it's so easy for us to fall off, and we're all human. We're all going to fall off at times, but it's about, not who fails the most. It's about who gets up more. And I think it's important to set these visual cues. It's like packing a gym bag, putting it in your car. I'm not going home until I go to the gym, right? Or meal prepping, or setting a book by your bed at night so that you read instead of watch Netflix. It's the same concept, right? Putting these visual cues for yourself to make sure that you're staying on the right path, I think is extremely powerful.
Yeah, making your environment work for you as opposed to just being at the whim of your environment is so important. You mentioned diet there and food. What does a typical day of eating look like for Mason?
Yeah, so this has drastically changed since I was an athlete to now, but I feel so much better, man. I'll tell you, because I was so caught up at the time in, staying bigger. I had to bigger people. So it's like, I have to stay bigger. I have to shovel food. I was eating a whole lot, focused on mass a lot, but I think that's been a huge change just from, I've lost probably like 15, 20 pounds.
Wow.
Just really from not trying to shovel it. But the day of eating for me, I think breakfast is huge for me personally. It starts my morning. I know there's a lot of talk on intermittent fasting and diets along those lines, but to me, a balanced diet, and one without processed foods, excess sugar, carbs, I think, have been made out to be a bad thing. I don't think they're a bad thing. They're an energy source for you. And then also just eating clean meat, right? There is a lot of sustainability issues, the way that a lot of these animals are treated. You can take it to moral, ethical issues as well. But for your body, if we're talking about specifically for performance, you want to be eating organic, grass-fed beef. Like, it's good for you. Don't be afraid of those things. And if you're eating eggs, make sure, they're, organic, free range, stuff like that kind of stuff is important. If you're eating fish even as well, I think a lot of people are sometimes like, fish is so good for me, I need to eat fish. Well, you don't want to eat like farm fish, right? There's mercury issues. There's a lot of other things that can be going on. So when you're looking at fish, try and go wild caught. Like, these kind of things are important, I think, when you're trying to mix in your diet the correct way. And then it just also depends on your goals, the way that you're eating towards your goals, right? for me, I want to continue to have lean mass. I lift, you know, I'm not trying to do long distance running as much. Like I do cardio, but it depends on what your goals are. If I wanted to be a long distance sprinter, or if I wanted to cut weight, then it would be different. If I wanted to gain weight, I'd probably up my calorie intake and my carbs and those kind of things as well. So there is no one size fits all approach to health, overall health, especially when we're talking about diet. I had a girl by the name of Ryan Overcash come on. She's actually going to be dropping on the podcast in 2 weeks, but she discusses epigenetics and basically how genetics are so important to our predisposition to certain foods, certain things that we eat, the way that we sleep, like, and we can track this back from our lineage, where we come from, those kind of things. So that being said, I don't think there is a one size fits all approach. Keto may work good for one person and not for the other. So you kind of have to find what's right for you, and that takes time. But I think there are some core things of, you know, drinking water, eating clean, sustainable meat, not eating like white carbs, white bread, white rice. These carbs aren't good for you. If you're eating good carbs like quinoa, sweet potatoes, jasmine rice, if you're trying to time it for like quick usable energy, like these kind of things are more important. So just, I would try different things, but be strong on a basis of eating whole, real foods, not processed. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's so crazy because I think that food has almost become a religion in some sense, where people will say, oh, like you have to do keto, you have to do vegan, you have to do this. And it goes back to something we were talking about before, totally unrelated, but it's like awareness. If you are aware of your body and you're aware of you eating the food and how that sits with you personally, then you can make better decisions about your food intake. For some person, like they might be allergic to apples, right? But another person, they love apples. And it's just like, you can only know if you test it yourself. And if you try foods and be like, okay, this food is healthy and it also is enjoyable. And that's the sweet spot. When you can find foods that are healthy and enjoyable, then you're winning, because you're never going to stop eating those foods. Like for me, sweet potatoes, jasmine rice, like all those meats, you know, that's what it is for me. And I just keep it simple with that. And I think there's a benefit to the mental space of keeping it simple with all your food choices. So I absolutely love that, man.
Yeah. And one more thing on that. I think that it's important to look at food as energy, not only for our bodies and for our mind. There is a direct correlation between the body and the mind. What you feed yourself and what you put in is ultimately what you're going to get out, right? Your energy levels, your sleep levels, your sex drive, all of these things are created from what you're putting into your bodies, right? Our gut health is like, your gut is the second mind, right? It has control over hormones, how you feel, anxiety, depression, all of these things, and inflammation within the gut. All of these things have been proven, right? These are facts. So certain foods are good for gut health. Certain foods aren't good for gut health. But stop looking at food as just simply pleasure, right? We want to enjoy our foods, but if you start being aware of the way that you feel when you eat certain foods, like for instance, last night I ate a pizza, guys. I ate a pizza and I had a couple beers. And guess what? This morning, my stomach felt like shit. My body's not used to that. It's like, dude, what are you putting in me right now? Like, I eat clean all week. I don't drink alcohol. All of that stuff. So then when I do put that foreign thing in my stomach, my body's like, yo, what's going on? Like freak out mode, right? And then I'm like sitting on the toilet like, damn, why did I do that? But I think you have to get your body, once your body starts getting that and feeling that, and you start feeling the effects of eating clean and taking care of your body, your mind and your energy and all these other things will change, and you'll realize, dang, this is important for me, because I feel like shit when I don't do it.
How do you balance the pursuit of improvement while also having fun and having beers and having pizza? Because that's personally an area I struggle in, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go all in on improving myself, and then I'll go all in on partying. But it's like, how do you find that balance?
Oh, that's a great question, man. And I'm not into like astrology or anything, but I am a Libra. And I think that's like balance. Like balance is a big thing for us. That is one of the things that's accurate for me in that description, right? Not everything's accurate. I don't know anything about that, but I will tell you that balance is one of the things that is very important to me because I think it keeps us centered. I think I have buddies that are like this, they get super hard into one thing and it's like, like it's a clean thing or whatever. And it's good for them. But then their social life may hurt from it, or their relationship life may hurt from it, or, their physical life may hurt from it if it's a bad thing that they're super all into. So I think it's being able to know yourself, being back to the awareness. I like the 80-20 rule, right? Like I said, during the week, I eat clean. I work out. I make sure I'm doing my meditation. I'm working long hours and I'm taking care of my mental health and I'm making that a priority. I'm taking care of my physical health. I'm trying to fuel well. But if on the weekend, I want to eat a pizza, I want to have a beer, like those kind of things I do, and I don't feel bad about it, right? My stomach may feel bad later. My head later, but I'm aware, right? I'm aware of like, this is something that I'm doing. I'm going to be able to let myself have fun with my friends or eat this meal and enjoy it and savor it. But not let that lead down to a path of like, a domino effect. I feel like sometimes when you deprive yourself of these things and then you give them to yourself, you're prone to binge and drinking, food, whatever that may be. So balance, I think, comes down to being aware and being able to have discipline, right? You have to have discipline, right? I don't think that if you don't have discipline in your life, then you're going to be, taken whichever way the wind will take you, and you will become a slave to your impulses. And that is one thing that's been huge for me. We all have these like little impulses in our minds, like, oh, I want to do this. Or like I get home after a long day, like, I want a cold beer right now, or whatever it may be. And I think that you have to be like aware that like, I'm not a slave to this impulse, right? I am in control of my life. And that's where I think that taking control of your life is so powerful and will change everything in the way that you look at it when you decide to take control of that thing and not let your impulses just pull you left and right.
Yeah, the impulse control and ability to be aware of those impulses is so important. What are some other habits? We spoke about meditation. We spoke about Wim Hof. We spoke about weightlifting. But what are some other habits that are crucial for you that if you need to feel good and be good mentally and clear, what are those habits for you personally?
Yeah, that's huge. I think we're all built for relationships, man. I think that having a connection to people is something that we all long. And I think that that's become even more, clear to us during this weird time we're slowly climbing out of. But, we are all innately want connection, and we want to feel connected to other people. So I think one of the biggest things for me too is my network, like being able to lean on those people, having someone that when I do want to go down that path that I'm not supposed to, I can call up and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, man. And that's where it comes back to being vulnerable. It's not comfortable to have those conversations, but it's human. We're all human. And when we allow our pride to get in the way of that, I think sometimes we go down paths that we don't want to go down. And when you're aware of that, it's even worse because you're like, oh, why did I do that? Like, I just let that take over. Like, why did I go down that path? I shouldn't have. And afterwards we know it and we could beat ourselves up about it. Right. But some of the habits that I've had, man, I mean, we talked about the cold showers. We talked about meditation, constantly taking care of your body, and then asking questions. So the quality of your life is the quality of your questions to me. That when I started thirsting for knowledge and thirsting for things that, gave back to me, that is when I was able to be like, whoa, this is the way, this is the way to live. And I think that if you let like learning and knowledge, if you take these things, if you let learning lead to knowledge, then you become like a fool, right? Because it's just knowledge, right? But if you let learning lead to action, you become wealthy in all areas of your life. So it's not just like reading these books, learning, listening to these podcasts, but taking these things that we say. And I always say this in Breathin Air. If you got one thing out of this, take it and enact it in your life. Like, I'm not here for you to just listen to me. I'm here to help you change your life. So take what I said or what you said and use it. If it's just one thing, if it's just one thing, it should just be one thing. Focus on that one thing, like whatever it may be. That one thing will then start, you'll get the advantage of, ooh, I want more. I want more. I want more. And that's when building those habits continues to have that compound interest. And then your life begins to change before your eyes. And you're like, turn around. Whoa, who was that person a year ago? That was not me. And I think that if you're not turning around and saying, who was that person a year ago every year, then you need to reassess what you're doing. I really, truly believe that.
It reminds me of something Matthew McConaughey says, which is like, my hero is myself in 10 years.
Love that quote.
Yeah. And it's so important, man. Just if you're constantly chasing and knowing you'll never get there, but knowing that if you continue to look forward and look back and say, wow, who I was 10 years ago, don't even know that person, then you're living a pretty good life from my perspective. You mentioned questions before, and you've obviously asked a lot of questions and had a lot of conversations on your podcast. What do you think the elements are that make for a good conversation?
That's a good question. Speaking of questions, the elements of a good question, are you speaking in terms of, like interviewing, or are we talking just like person to person?
Could be either. Take it whichever direction you want to take it.
One thing that I heard earlier in terms of interviewing, this may help you, is the question saying or, right? When we pose questions and then we say or, like, do you like this, or is this something that has made you feel this way? By saying or, you're like, kind of creating your own little pathway to their answer, as opposed to just saying, do you like tacos?
Yeah.
Do you like tacos or da 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 da, right? But I think the biggest thing in asking questions from me to you, from friend to a friend, is not being afraid of judgment. Knowing that everybody has these questions and that you're not lower because you're asking questions. Think of these habits and these things as, a way to level up in life. If you're not constantly asking questions, then that just means you're not looking for the correct answer. Like, you're not looking for answers, right? We want to know the answer to things that we don't already know. And if we just sat and said, I know what 2 + 2 is, I'm good for the rest of my life. 4, baby. I'm sitting here at 4. That's all I need. Like, no, that's not how this goes. We have to ask more questions. So I think not being afraid of judgment, being vulnerable, it goes back to those things of saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to look for them and I'm going to find them, and being relentless to finding those answers. There's a book that I read by Tim Grover. This is another great book, actually. Relentless.
One of my favorites.
Dude, incredible book. And I read this. I need to reread it. I read it a long time ago, but it had an incredible impact on me. And just that idea of being relentless in your pursuit for what you want, right? You're going to have to ask questions. I didn't have an Instagram until I started Breathin Air Podcast, guys. And I was the guy that everyone was like, Mason, you got to get an Instagram. I'm like, I don't want the drama. I don't want another time sucker. Like, get it away. And then a year ago at 24 years old, I was like, okay, I understand this is a powerful tool. Like, let's go with it. And so I had to ask questions. This medium of podcasting, I had to ask questions. I had to search for knowledge. And I think that if you're not searching for knowledge, if you're not trying to continue to grow, then you'll ultimately, fade away. You won't get better. So put yourself in those uncomfortable positions, right? You talk about this a lot all the time. And I think that it's so important. Like, put yourself in as many uncomfortable positions as possible, because that is where growth is found. If you want to look at it as, I'm going to the gym, I'm tearing down this muscle. Well, what happens when you tear down your muscle fibers? If you fuel correctly, you recover correctly, they build back stronger, right? Same thing with your mind. Think about your mind as a muscle. Think about your mind like your bicep. Like, you want to tear down your mind. You want to take yourself to places that your mind hasn't been before so that it can adjust. Our bodies are so incredible the way that they work and adjust to their environment. So you talk about Wim Hof, like, this dude literally had, through his mind, brought his body temperature up to a room temperature in ice everywhere, right? So initially his body temperature went down to like 89 degrees. And then it came back up while he was in the ice because of his discipline in his mind. That just shows you how powerful your mind is. There's a story of a guy that was he was a prisoner of war during World War II, right? Peeing in his helmet, like in the snow, in the trenches, obviously being treated awfully. And can't imagine what kind of a headspace that would be like. I can't even imagine, right? But for the 2 years that he was in this concentration camp, or that he was, a prisoner at war, he was envisioning himself playing golf. He was looking at his swing. He was seeing the trees, the grass, watching his backswing, his follow through, the way he was standing. He was breaking it down to every little detail. And this was keeping him sane, he said. This was helping him stay in a mental state where he could function in this awful environment. He gets rescued from this camp, goes back and plays this first round of golf in multiple years, shoots the best score he ever shot in his entire life. So your mind does not know the difference of the mental reps that you're doing and the physical things that you're doing. You can trick your mind and your subconscious to actually repping things in life, and whether that's, manifesting things in life, whether that's physical things, those kind of things that you program into your brain will become reality. And that is why it's so important to take control of our thought life and take control of those things, because they will manifest in real life if you allow them to.
I love that. And one thing that makes me think of is The Champion's Mind by Lanny Bassham, I believe. Incredible book that really opened me up to the potential. I believe he was a pro shooter, like a gun shooter, and he was in the Olympics, taught his son his method for using his mind for power, and transformed his life, won a gold medal. His son won a gold medal. Incredible story, and a legit guy. I highly recommend that book. And I'm curious, do you have any specific visualization practice, or is it just Wim Hof breathing, or just thinking during the day? What's your visualization practice, if at all?
So meditation for me really comes back, meditation, visualization, these kind of things. I think it's about calming your mind. But I had this guy on the other day. If you haven't listened, you definitely should. Christian Straka is his name. And he is a global Adidas runners mindset coach, and also runs this company called MindSize, who is directly focused on mindset and how it correlates athletic performance. So they work with a lot of athletes. He's worked with all these people, right? So the mind-body connection. And it's so important to realize that that's a real thing. He broke it down into three things: concentration, clarity, and coolness, right? And I mentioned during the interview, like, yeah, meditation, I'm trying to calm my mind. He's like, no, he's got an accent. He's like, no, you're not trying to calm your mind. He's like, that's where the misconception happens of meditation. Because when you're meditating, there's going to be a lot of things that like come into your mind. Be able to take that and push it out. Take something that comes in and push it out. Take something that comes in, push it out, right? And just being there, being aware. You don't have to be sitting cross-legged with your hands up like this, like humming like a monk. Like meditation can come in many different ways and forms. And Dr. Daniel Amen, he basically took psychiatry and as like sitting down talking about our feelings, right? Oh, like our basics you think of talking to a shrink. He said, why are we doing this? If I tear my ACL, I'm not going into a doctor and the doctor saying, does your knee hurt? Yes. Okay, you tore your ACL. This is what you should do. No, they're taking imaging, right? They're going to take an MRI. So what he did in his practice was start taking brain imaging and focusing on the actual like circuitry that's firing for certain things to break down these problems. I think it's incredible. But he has this acronym called Bright Minds, and one of them is blood flow. And blood flow is, the basis for ADHD, depression, Alzheimer's, like a list of other things, right? The brain is 2% of your body weight, only 2% of your body weight, but it takes up 20 to 30% of your calories, 20% of your oxygen, and 20% of your blood flow.
Wow.
So to think that we as humans know these facts, a lot of people don't. I didn't know it until I learned from this, right? But that's how important your brain is to like running your body, running your life. So to have a mental practice like that is so important. And it's hard to meditate. It's hard to do those things. But when you start utilizing them, it opens so many doors in your life.
Incredible, man. And that's something I'm going to take with me. The 2% to the 20%. That's incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's when I heard that, I was like, whoa, like this is something that needs to be like accounted, known. Like we need to realize that our mind runs our life, like our brain runs our life. And it's a complex thing. Neuroscience is so like, it's so crazy to me the way that it works. Like our brains are so vast.
If you think about it, it's like the placebo effect is factored into every trial because they know that if someone believes something, it will change that experiment. So It's like, why aren't we taking advantage of that for our own lives and placeboing ourselves into creating the outcomes we want in our life, right?
Yeah, there's so many placebo effects in terms of, over-the-counter medicine versus alternative medicine versus depression, anxiety, the way people feel. They thought they were getting Xanax or whatever because they had anxiety. They were getting sugar pills and they felt way less anxious. Like those kind of things, right? Those kind of things are out there. But that's, once again, you have to ask these questions. I think it's easy to get taken down this path of this is what's been told to me. This is the way that it is. This is what the media is feeding me. This is the way that it is. I think people are becoming more cognizant of the fact that we have to do our own research and make our own conclusions because a lot of times there is ulterior motives behind behind what people say, what people feed. It's important. There's a thing that said, if you're going to quote a study, you need to see who funded the study. You need to see who funded that study. Like that's important, right? There's always some loopholes here and there. So just do your own research. Don't be a pessimist per se. Like I'm the least pessimistic person you'll meet, but do your own research. I think that's really important when it comes to a lot of these things.
Yeah. And also understanding that N equals 1, like you are your own experiment. You are creating your own reality for yourself. And if something didn't work in a clinical trial, but it works for you, then do it. Like who cares if science says this? Science could say something else in 10 years. I think something like 80% of studies with less than 1,000 people were later proved incorrect or disproved, something crazy like that. So it's like, you need to, I for one was always looking at science, always saying, what does science say? But now it's like, what do I say? What, after experimenting myself, how does this work for me? And I think you have to balance those two, like you were talking about before with balance, right?
Yeah, you do have to balance those two. You have to feel what's inside of you, what works for you. That is why I'm such a proponent of not a one size fits all approach. And I can say it times, and I'll say it a million times more, because I think we're often fed this works. This is the way for you to lose weight. This is the way for you to meditate. This is the way. If you can't do it this way, like you're screwed up. Like that's not how it works. We are all so unique, and all of us have unique things about us and the way our bodies work. And like I said, there's a basis for things that you should do and shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, you have to try it out, see what works best for you, and not just follow the status quo per se. Like don't be a sheep. Don't just follow the pack. Like it's okay to be different and know that you're different, and don't just go with everything that may not feel right to you, that may not feel good to you.
I agree.
The spirit factors in too. It's like science can't prove a lot of these things. Like if we always just turn to science, like then what happens to that subconscious voice in our head? Like what's scientific about the like, I mean, that the aspect of spirit is something that science can't prove. It's called faith, right? It's the faith that we believe in. And I think there's so much to be said for that. We can't get so caught up in the science. And I believe in the science. I love facts. I love being able to state these things because they're right there in front of us. Like this is concrete. But are some things that aren't concrete in life, right? There's a lot of things that aren't concrete in life. And that is where the spirit and faith and those kind of things come in. And when you are able to connect with that and know that there's a purpose for your life, I truly believe that, man. Like, I believe that every single person has a purpose for their life. And you sometimes have to give into that purpose. You have to believe in that purpose. You have to let that purpose take you where it's supposed to take you. Destiny, if you want to call it, right? We have a destiny. I believe in destiny. I believe in that. It gives me peace. I have faith in the destiny. That gives me peace. There's no science behind that. I know that there's going to be ebbs and flows in life, and things aren't going to go my way, that I'm going to fail, that people aren't going to like what I have to say. But I believe that along the way, I will be walking the path to my destiny by following my heart with what I think is right.
When did faith become a role in your life?
Faith was in my life at an early age, right? I grew up in Texas in the Bible Belt. My mom's a devout Christian. I believe in God. I do think that is something that has been a huge cornerstone for my life. A lot of my faith is wrapped up in that. But I also will say that I was the opposite of a model citizen, right? I mean, like, I say that, and I was doing everything I could to not be that and to push that away, because it was something at a young age. It was like, you'll go to church, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You have to find your own path to spirituality. Like, just going to church, just, praying or whatever that may be, that's not spiritual. I think spirituality is the actual connection that you feel with God, or that you feel with your spiritual self, your spiritual being. I don't think that a lot of the things, the institutionalized religion that a lot of people seem to push on people and those kind of things, that's not my approach. I'm not knocking that approach if that's something that someone does. And I just think that it is your own path. You have to find your own path with that, and you have to listen to it, right? You can ignore it, but it's there. If you go searching for it, you will find it. I truly believe that. And I think that it'll change your life. It'll give you a lot of purpose. And that's something that's a daily walk. Out of the body, the mind, the spirit, my worst one, spirit, every time, man. Like, I have to constantly check myself with that and being. But when I'm right with like, you can feel when something's not right in your spirit, like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like when you meet a person, like the vibe that you get from a person or those kind of things, like that's your spirit, like talking to you. And wherever you think that comes from is wherever you think that comes from, whether it's the Holy Spirit or Buddha or whatever it is. Right. But like, that is there. We can all attest that we have felt that. So being able to listen to that and come to grips with that, have a relationship with that, feed that. If you don't feed it, it's going to fall off. Like, that voice may slowly dissipate in your life. It really will. I've been there where I had no Holy Spirit prompting whatsoever. I was, fuck it all, like, let's go. I didn't have a conscious of that. And when you don't feed that relationship, just like when you don't work out, just like when you don't, do mental reps and do meditation and stay on, a schedule that works for you and know that you're harnessing and harvesting good habits, they'll fall off. If you don't use it, you lose it. And that's the exact same thing for spirit. So that's my biggest thing that I have to work on too. And when you quench that relationship, then it will fall off. So it's another thing that you have to constantly be there and be present with and listen to.
What do you do when your relationship with spirit falls off? Do you talk to me about that?
I think we can all feel it when it falls off. We know when we're doing things we're not supposed to. We know when we're going down we're not supposed to. When we constantly deny that and don't listen to it is when it kind of disappears, right? And that's where you have to go look for it. You have to search for it. And you have to be intentional in life, guys. You have to be intentional. That's one of the things that is one of the basis for, I think, success, right? We talk about relentless. You have to be relentless in your drive for creating your highest self, your utmost potential. And if you don't, you're going to get pulled every which way and direction. Like, you will get pushed wherever the wind takes you, right? So you have to be intentional in the way that you live. You have to be intentional in the way that you eat. You have to be intentional in the way that you are, meditating or coming to grips with your spiritual side or whatever that is that you're trying to grow. You have to be like, I'm going to do this. And this is something that I want to do, because if you don't, it probably isn't going to come. Like, honestly, it's not. Like, I can say I want to be a millionaire, but if I, jerk off and just watch Netflix all day, and I'm not going to become a millionaire. Like, I can say I want to have 6-pack abs, but if I eat Burger King and drink beers all day, I'm not going to have 6-pack abs. Like, that comes back to the whole thing. Like, our mindset is important, but without that action behind it, it's just a thought.
Wow. Where is Mason Bendigo in 3 years?
Man, I just turned 25. So I told myself, I'm like, the next 5 years I think it's so important. I'm like,
make or break, baby.
So much focus on from now until 30. For me, I'm like, this is going to be the basis for the rest of my life. Like, I'm going to build, whether that's wealth and my body up. And I'm in the prime right now with your body, like your testosterone levels are highest they'll ever be naturally. So I'm trying to take advantage of that and take advantage of just being present as well, I think, is something, because a lot of ambitious people can attest to this. We think constantly, like, how can I get better here? How can I do this? How can I do that 5 years from now? Right. But I think for me to be the best person 5 years from now at 30, or 3 years from now, for your question, I have to focus on now, today. What am I doing? What are these micro habits that are compounding interest? Same thing, stock market, right? Or investing in real estate, whatever that is. If you want to talk about money, there's compound interest. This compound interest is the same thing for all of your habits in life. So having that compound interest and knowing that, hey, I'm gonna have to be patient with a lot of these things, but if I have a vision and if I have the standards in my life that I set for myself, that I don't let myself falter, and I have the vision and the goals, and I'm doing these micro habits every day, then I will reach my goal in 5 years. I will do that. But if I get too caught up and my mind is pulled this way, my mind's pulled, I should have bought that stock there, or I should have done this, or I should have done that, then guess what? I'm stuck in that past situation that's been gone, and all that's doing is affecting my future and my present. And if affecting my present, it's affecting my future. So I think everything draws back to be here. Be here in this place. Be thankful for what we do have, but don't be satisfied per se. Be grateful, but don't be satisfied. Like, want more for your life. And that goes to the 10-year thing that McConaughey said. Every day that same statement stands true. So it's like resetting itself after every single day. So you'll never reach that person, but I'll be damned if I'm not trying to reach that person.
I love it, man. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this conversation up? This has been so much fun.
Yeah, it's been great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. And for anyone that's listening that wants more of this, I try and bring the same energy and these kind of guests on the show as well. Danny's been on the show and he knows what it's all about. Like I said, our 3 pillars are body, mind, and spirit. And it's where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset. The Breathin Air Podcast. Y'all come check it out. I'd love to have you. And if you have any questions for me about this conversation, even, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Breathin Air Podcast, or you can find us on our online site, breathinairpodcast.com, or you can shoot an email to me at breathinairpodcast@gmail.com. So everything's pretty basic. Breathing. So breathing without the G, Breathin Air Podcast. And thank you all so much for making it this far. If you did, you're a trooper. And I hope that you got something out of this, and that, like I said earlier, you utilize it in your life. I hope that you take something and utilize it, and that you're better for listening to this podcast. So thank you, Danny, for having me.
Thank you, Mason, for your wisdom. This has been so much fun, and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for everything you brought to this conversation, your peace and presence and your wisdom. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate you.